Hello, everyone, and welcome. Some of the stories we have for you right now. No survivors. The devastation as rescue crews turn to recovery after a deadly midair collision.
Not sure how to process it.
A figure skating community in mourning. What we know about the victims on board.
We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system.
Donald Trump points the finger of blame at his predecessors for the tragedy.
The accused was known to the victims.
Investigating the horrible murder of 2 New Brunswick boys.
We don't process a lot of stuff in Canada.
Plus, why cultivating a Buy Canadian movement isn't always that easy.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
We don't believe there are any survivors. That is the heartbreaking conclusion of U.S. officials after a passenger jet and Black Hawk helicopter collided in midair and plunged into the murky, icy waters of the Potomac River on final approach to Reagan International Airport. A camera captures the moment the American Airlines regional jet flying from Wichita, Kansas to Washington, D.C. with 64 people on board collided with the chopper carrying 3 military personnel. A desperate search and rescue operation is now a sad recovery mission. CTV's Mike Couture reports.
American Eagle Flight 5342 was on its final approach. On the left, a U.S. military Black Hawk helicopter was on a training flight. They crossed paths in a fiery collision.
Crash. This is Alert 3. Crash. This is Alert 3.
Both aircraft plunged into the icy waters of the Potomac River.
I just saw a fireball and then it was just gone. So I haven't seen anything since they hit the river.
People who live near the airport are used to loud noises from aircraft, but this was different.
It was loud, it was unusual, it was something you only hear on video games, on movies, something I have never experienced.
Hundreds of emergency responders rushed to the scene and spent the night searching the frigid waters, hoping to find survivors. Twisted debris and mangled metal further complicated matters. But as the hours passed, hope faded, and the focus turned into recovering bodies of the 60 passengers and 4 crew members from the plane, as well as the 3 soldiers who were in the helicopter.
At this point, we don't believe there are any survivors from this accident.
The airspace around Washington is often congested, with multiple airports and military bases in a relatively small area. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said military flights over the Potomac River are routine, but he believes tragically a mistake was made last night.
Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DoD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable.
A dive team has found what appears to be one of the plane's 2 data recorders, which they hope will shed some more light on the accident.
We do not know enough facts to be able to rule in or out human factor, mechanical factors. That is part of the NTSB investigative process.
Investigators hope to have a preliminary report in 30 days to determine the cause of what's likely the U.S.'s worst aviation disaster in almost a quarter century. Mike Couture, CTV News.
As Mike said, the U.S. hasn't experienced an airline tragedy of this scope in decades, and it's hit especially hard the international skating community. On board that commercial aircraft were several U.S. figure skaters and 2 former Russian world champions. CTV's Heather Wright is with us now. Heather, what can you tell us about the passengers and the communities they represented?
Well, Sandy, of the 64 people aboard that flight, at least 14 were figure skaters. They had all been at the National Figure Skating Championships in Wichita.
2 teenage skaters, their moms, and coaches among the passengers of American Airlines Flight 5342 that have been identified. The skaters, including 16-year-old Spencer Lane, had been taking part in a development camp held in conjunction with the National Skating Championships in Wichita. Lane posted this picture to his Instagram account shortly before takeoff.
These kids and their parents, they're here at our facility in Norwood 6, sometimes 7 days a week. It's a close, tight bond. And I think for all of us, we have lost family.
6 of the passengers skated out of the Skating Club of Boston. including coaches Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Nomov, who won the pair's World Figure Skating Championships in 1994. The married couple have a son who was also in Kansas, but returned to Boston on an earlier flight. The community there in mourning, including Olympic silver medalist Nancy Kerrigan.
I feel for the athletes, the skaters, their families, but anyone that was on that plane, not just the skaters, because it's just such a tragic event.
Last night's tragedy reminiscent of a 1961 plane crash in Belgium that killed the entire U.S. figure skating team that was en route to the World Championships in Prague.
Vigils and prayer services are being held in Wichita, where flags across the state are being lowered in honor of the victims. Sandy.
CTV's Heather Wright. Thank you, Heather. So many questions swirling around what caused this horrible collision. Everything was normal until it wasn't. It was a clear night, a typical approach. The military helicopter was aware of the jet. Now, a full team of investigators led by the NTSB will examine what happened and why, and a team from Canada's Transportation Safety Board will also be involved. We've asked CTV aviation specialist Phil Dirty to join us today. Phil, the investigation is underway. Based on what is known so far, what do you think happened?
Good evening, Sandy. It's hard to say exactly what happened, but looking at all the information that is available through radar and audio from the ATC, everything was fine with the CRJ aircraft. It was on approach to runway number 1. Air traffic control asked it to change to runway number 33, which they did. They complied. They were cleared to land. The helicopter was flying on its assigned path on Route 4, but it was supposed to be at below 200 feet. The crash actually happened at around 375 feet, so we don't know why the helicopter was that high. It was supposed to be below that.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with congestion. This is certainly one of the busiest airports in the United States. Could that be an issue? I know they've raised the whole specter of air traffic controllers at the time. Could that be a factor?
It didn't seem to be a factor. There wasn't that many aircraft in the, it was around 9 o'clock at night, so there wasn't very many aircraft around. That airspace is very congested, but it seemed to be going smoothly.
Okay. Canada's involved. What will our role be in this investigation?
Well, anybody, as per the ICAO regulations, anybody that has a stake in the crash, so if they have machinery or personnel that were on the aircraft, then that country will have a contributing factor. So Mitsubishi will be providing technical support for the CRJ aircraft. GE will provide technical support for the engines, and the TSB will be there to see what's going on as well.
All right, Phil, thank you. Now, Transport Minister Anita Anand has confirmed what we just heard, and more specifically that 2 investigators from Canada's Transportation Safety Board will be on site.
The plane that was impacted in the incident is a Canadian-made plane, and therefore the Canadian authorities are going to be participating in the investigation. But as a government, and certainly as a minister, I stand ready to support my American counterparts in this investigation, given the tragedy that everyone witnessed last night.
And the full interview with the minister is on CTV's Power Play. As for the U.S. president, he already has a very strong opinion about who's responsible for the tragedy. We want you to hear what Donald Trump said this morning.
The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people.
And with no evidence, Donald Trump railed against diversity hiring policies by the Federal Aviation Authority, which he claims put stress on air traffic control. Trump also blames the Biden and Obama administration. Now, also some mixed messaging on whether Donald Trump's tariffs go into effect on February the 1st. Yesterday, the incoming Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick suggested it's an arbitrary date. Today, Donald Trump said Canada and Mexico will face stiff penalties, stiff tariffs. CTV's Rachel Ayala was listening in as Trump addressed the media. Okay, Rachel, is Saturday still the start date?
Yeah, Sandy, it seems like it. We have Canadian officials in D.C. as we speak, trying to make a last-ditch effort to avoid the imposition of tariffs. But Donald Trump just told reporters in the Oval Office that he intends to go ahead, hitting both Canada and Mexico with a 25% tariff this coming weekend. He said this is citing the flow of fentanyl and migrants across the border, as well as what he said was unfair trade practices. Take a listen.
Tariffs on Canada and Mexico, 25%. That's coming on Saturday? That's coming on the 1st, Saturday. But no oil tariff, no oil tariffs. No, I don't, well, I didn't say that. You said that. No. Well, I don't want to misinterpret. No, we may or may not. We're going to make that determination probably tonight on oil. Yeah, because they send us oil. We'll see. It depends on what the price is.
All right, now, Rachel, as you said, Canadian officials are making a last-ditch pitch, not taking any chances. What are they planning?
Yeah, so we have learned that the Canadian government had actually texted a 3-minute video to Howard Lutnick, the commerce pick from Trump, to try to make the case to him directly about what measures we have taken at the border. We were told that the video started off with a quiet look at the northern border, drone footage showing all of the various measures Canada has put in place to try to assuage Trump's concerns about fentanyl and migrants at the border. That included drone footage. It included the new money for drug-sniffing dogs, helicopters. So that was a lobbying effort, a kind of a quiet diplomatic move by Dominic LeBlanc, Canada's finance minister, texting that directly to Lutnick last night.
Okay. Rachel, thank you so much for this update. Okay. And the leader of the federal NDP is promising to force a spring election when Parliament returns end of March, but he's calling on the government to get to work sooner to support workers ahead of a possible tariff war.
There is 2 months. So is the Liberal government proposing that we do nothing for 2 months?
Jagmeet Singh's comments come as he announces an NDP Buy Canadian policy. Singh says Ottawa should bar American companies from all procurement contracts. And as we go to break, a leading voice in the British invasion of the pop charts has died. Singer and songwriter Marianne Faithfull was a breakout star in the swinging 60s. Faithfull was a teenager with her first smash single, As Tears Go By. It was co-written by Rolling Stones frontman Mick Jagger. Faithfull battled addiction and then disappeared from the spotlight briefly, but went on to resurrect her career in the 1970s. Marianne Faithfull died today in London. She was 78. Shock in a St. John neighborhood after 2 young boys were found dead. A New Brunswick man is facing murder charges. CTV's Sarah Plowman now on what police are saying about the killings and the suspect. Sarah?
Sandy, we still have a lot of questions about what happened, about who's involved. Police are releasing very few details, citing the need to protect the investigation. What they have said is that the accused is 46 years old. He's currently in hospital under police custody and has now been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Police say the man knew the victims, a 10-year-old boy and a 17-year-old boy, and there's no concern for public safety. We asked for more information about how the 2 boys knew each other and the accused. This is what police said.
I can say is that we are not releasing any information in relation to what relationship the victim and the accused have in order to protect the identity of the victims.
Police have been at this apartment complex since yesterday morning. They arrived after someone called 911 and forced their way inside. People who live here say it's typically very quiet. I met one man who was moving in yesterday and today. He had no idea what happened until we told him.
That's why we seen a few blood spots in the stairway.
Okay.
So we knew that there's something happens upstairs.
People here are definitely shocked. One neighbor told me what happened is scary and very unexpected. Sandy.
CTV Sarah Plowman. Toronto police are searching for 5 suspects after a brazen attempt to rob a jewelry store, and it was all caught on camera. A pickup truck is seen smashing into the store multiple times as masked suspects with bags and hammers try to break through the front door. They fail to get in and then flee in another vehicle. And police in Saskatoon are asking for the public's help with an ongoing investigation. Now, they have arrested a man they say placed GPS trackers on cars, and they believe there are more victims out there. CTV's Alison Bamford is in Saskatoon. Alison, how common is this type of crime?
Well, Sandy, GPS trackers have been linked to auto thefts and other crimes across the country. Here in Saskatoon, police say this type of harassment isn't very common, and an investigation of this magnitude hasn't happened before. Police first started investigating last September when one man was working on his truck and noticed this, a GPS tracker wrapped in black tape. Police have recovered 7 of these so far, all on the inside of fenders, and officers believe upwards of 30 could be out there.
We have a lot to find. We'd like to find them before the batteries go dead, and we can establish a tracking pattern with them.
Police say there's no threat to the public. Officers arrested and charged 46-year-old Marty Shira on several counts of harassment, mischief, intimidation, and fraudulent concealment. He remains in custody. Shira was known to police, and in 2003, a man of the same name and age was sentenced to 14 years for kidnapping and sexually assaulting a woman. Of the GPS tracking victims, police believe Shira only knew some of them. CTV News spoke with the first victims to file a police report. They say they've never met Shira, but one of them does work within blocks of the apartment he was arrested at. They say they're happy to know he's in custody, but still wondering why and how this happened to them. Sandy?
CTV's Alison Bamford. Still ahead after the break, the challenges of buying Canadian. Farmers share some of the issues that can easily crop up.
Tonight, criminals behind bars going online.
It's wildly mind-blowing that he can still be doing it while physically being in custody.
In a way, this is a public safety issue.
It's absolutely a public safety issue.
W5 investigates tonight on CTV National News and ctvnews.ca.
Well, with Donald Trump standing firm on his tariff threats against Canadian goods, there is a growing chorus for us to buy Canadian. But for some businesses, that is easier said than done. CTV's Adrian Gobriel has been looking into that aspect of the story and is here with us now. Adrian.
Sandy, welcome inside this sprawling greenhouse in Leamington, Ontario, where thousands of peppers are currently being grown that are scheduled to be picked by mid-March. Now, by then, we could be in the midst of a tariff war. 80% of what is grown here is shipped to the United States. And that's an interesting stat when we consider that Canada imports billions of dollars in fruits and vegetables each and every year. Now, agriculture experts say that it's simply cheaper for Canada to import produce, and farmers here can make more money selling their yield south of the border. Now, with the concern of tariffs on the horizon, we spent this week visiting multiple farms, speaking with those farmers about what they're growing and what they're up against. Welcome to Right Way Farms, an hour outside of Toronto. The family here owns 250 acres and rent another 50 nearby. Farms in this specific region used to grow a wider variety of produce.
Like every block here would be 10 farms, right? So you'd have a family on a 100-acre farm every next door to each other. And then now I farm most of this block.
Farmer Ryan Wright has had to focus on what turns a profit on the domestic and international market, and how to maximize his soil and land in a cold weather climate.
Corn, soybeans, wheat. We grow a little bit of mixed grains like oats and barley, and then we grow hay and other forages for the cattle.
As for the small patch of beans grown for human consumption on this farm, they don't stay in Canada.
Last year we actually grew food-grade soybeans, so they're an IP, non-GMO bean, so they're food-grade bean. They go for the Asian market. We got to make an income and pay the bills just like everyone else.
According to some experts, it's time for the public and private sector to work closer together to support Canadian agriculture and create a more self-sustaining food supply.
We just took the lazy route of importing products from the United States. That's the cheapest way, the easiest way to do it. The hardest way is to actually have a plan And Canada doesn't have a plan.
Another example of how reliant we are on the United States for a variety of our produce. Take lettuce as an example. 90% of our leafy greens are imported, with the majority coming from the U.S. Sandy?
That's interesting. Okay, Adrian, thank you. After the break, check up on aisle 1, how a former Costco store is transforming into a healthcare hub. An innovative way to deal with a shortage of healthcare space in Newfoundland. An old, unused Costco store is being transformed into an ambulatory and urgent care facility. CTV's Garrett Barry went to take a look. And Garrett, what did you find there?
Sandy, many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are already familiar with this building, but now a major facelift is underway to give this space a second life.
From checkouts to check-ups, this former Costco warehouse will soon be home to audiologists, physiotherapists, and an urgent care clinic.
They will have a better experience. They'll be seen faster, presumably, and it will decant some of the pressure from the emergency departments, which are under tremendous pressure right now.
The NL Health Board announced its lease of this building about 5 years after Costco itself moved out. 80,000 square feet near other retail outlets, it was already a destination and an attractive target.
There's something to say about, having a facility such as this that was so well known to the community.
It's not the first flip of its kind, but it's an ambitious example of what some in the industry call medtail, putting medical services in and around retail outlets. Real estate consultant Kate Kamanzuli says it's a growing trend that private clinics and physicians have led, and governments and health boards are taking to the next level.
It's now waiting to see how governments do one large platform at a time. And I just hope that they find the partners to help them execute on that properly, because I do think that this is a huge opportunity.
In Newfoundland, officials say coming into a building like this gave construction crews a head start.
We already have, the structure of the facility, the curtain wall, the cladding of the facility is already built, and as well as you can see a significant amount of parking space already constructed.
That head start means buildings can be flipped and ready way quicker. The health board here says it expects this old Costco will be ready to see patients before the end of the year. Sandy.
Interesting idea. Okay, thanks, Garrett. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Omar is here later tonight, and Heather will be here tomorrow. Your local CTV News is coming up. Be well.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.